Hi, this is Stuart Talley. We have some breaking news in the Pinnacle metal-on-metal hip trial that's currently pending in Dallas, Texas. We just received word that the jury has come back with a verdict, probably the biggest verdict in any hip case to date. The verdict came back at $498 million against Johnson Johnson and DePuy. This was a case that was brought on behalf of 5 individuals. If you look at the verdict, it was $498 million. Approximately $360 million of that was punitive damages, and the rest was compensatory damages for the individual plaintiffs. The plaintiffs at issue, there were 5 of them. The average compensatory verdict for these 5 plaintiffs was about $27 million. With respect to cases that are similar to this that have gone to trial, that's by far the largest compensatory verdict to date. It's also the largest punitive damage award to date. Many attorneys, including myself, who have been watching this case, are not really surprised by this outcome. The trial went very well for the plaintiffs. The evidence that came in was, in my words, shocking with respect to what DePuy did with this hip and the product. There was lots of emails and internal documents showing that DePuy actively tried to conceal problems with these hips from doctors. They engaged in a lot of nefarious conduct with respect to the marketing of this product. There was allegations that clinical trials were falsified. Advertising was based on these falsified clinical trials, and a lot of doctors were paid bribes and given money to use this hip and to tell other doctors that it was a great deal. Some of the doctors who received money, we're talking millions of dollars. One of the main witnesses for the defendants received more than $7.5 million in royalty payments from Johnson Johnson and DePuy. So we have a verdict. This is a very good development for the plaintiffs in this case. Many have asked, well, what happens next? And what I can tell you is that DePuy has said that they'll never settle these cases. That was the position they took at the very beginning. They took the position that this hip was different than their other metal-on-metal hip called the DePuy ASR, and that they would never settle these cases. The problem with that strategy is if you keep getting hit with $500 million verdicts, you can't keep that up. And the thing that Johnson Johnson has to face is not only was there a $500 million verdict in this case, but there's 8,000 more cases. And if they keep trying cases, even if they win 90% of them, if they get hit with a $500 million verdict every 1 out of every 10 cases, that's a big, big problem for the company. So a verdict like this puts a lot of pressure on the board for Johnson & Johnson. Shareholders will start to ask questions, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on Johnson & Johnson to try to resolve these cases. The one concern I might have is that Johnson & Johnson may have some hope in appealing this verdict, and they will certainly appeal it. There were a lot of controversial rulings by the judge in the case, and they may be sitting back thinking that they're going to get this verdict overturned. The problem with that strategy is that that's a 2-year deal. It takes at least 2 years to get an appeal like this through the process. In the meantime, there's trials coming up. This judge has indicated that he wants another 5 cases lined up for the fall. And so that's going to put a lot of pressure on DePuy to try and come up with a reasonable solution to this problem. The other thing that I think is important is the defense costs. When you defend one of these cases, even if Johnson & Johnson wins one of these trials, they're spending millions of dollars on each trial. They spent millions of dollars on experts for this first trial. They have a whole team of lawyers that are billing between $600 to $1,000 an hour in the courtroom every day for 10 weeks. And those costs really add up. So, like I said, I think this verdict is very good. for the plaintiffs. It definitely is encouraging and will hopefully bring DePuy and Johnson to the table so that they can fairly compensate people that have legitimate claims. If you have a Pinnacle hip or you have any other questions about the verdict or the trial or how it went, feel free to give us a call, or you can fill out one of our online forms and a lawyer will get back to you right away.